Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to people in other time zones. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and welcome to this Living in Oneness Summit call. It's great to be with you. I'm going to be interviewing a very special guest today, Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee. Llewellyn is a Sufi teacher who was born in England and then moved to Northern California to found the Golden Sufi Center. Since 2000, his writing and teaching has been on spiritual responsibility in our present time of transition and an awakening global consciousness of oneness. I know you're going to enjoy this program. I'll be introducing Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee shortly. We're all very excited about today's program. We have about 21,000 registered for today's call. Some cannot listen in live, so we send out a recorded link so these people can listen in later. Thank you so much again for prioritizing time to be here for this very important conversation. As always, this call is interactive with each of you, our listeners, so we want to invite you to put your questions in the question window on Instant Teleseminar. I promise that we'll get to at least a few of your questions during the hour. A little about Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we see there is only one presence, the divine, and see we are all offspring and expressions of the divine. This means God's love, light, grace, and peace are ours because there is no separation and we share the same essence. We don't share this as something academic or intellectual. We believe everyone and everything is a beautiful and sacred face of the divine. Since our founding in 2003, we've done our best to live as one with the divine, each other, and our earth home. We don't need to be perfect. It doesn't have to feel heavy. We must only do our best. When we talk about oneness with the divine, of course, this is true for all of life, not just humanity. This has repercussions for how we see ourselves, others, and the earth that is our home. This means everyone and everything is sacred and should be treated as such. It also means we're responsible for the world around us because, in truth, it's part of our authentic self encompassing the whole of the earth. Perhaps there's nothing more important than this, coming to see ourselves as a cell in the body of the divine, the earth, and stepping into a role where we're caring for the earth and the world that we live in. This is important and urgent work. We are advocating personal development that crosses over into all of our roles, including that of partner, parent, and community citizen, but also institutional change, so we live as one collectively and create a fulfilling, compassionate, and sustainable world. If you resonate with our work, we invite you to go to the humanitiesteam.org website and reach out to us about projects you'd like to become involved in. It's a brand new website, so you might even take a moment now if you like the idea. And again, that's humanitiesteam.org with a Y. Please get comfortable as we begin our program. I'm now going to introduce our special guest. Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee, Ph.D., is a Sufi teacher born in London in 1953. He has followed the Naqshbandi Sufi path since he was 19. In 1991, he became a successor to Irina Tweedy, who brought this particular Indian branch of Sufism to the West, and is the author of Daughter of Fire, a diary of a spiritual training with a Sufi master. He then moved to Northern California and founded the Golden Sufi Center. Author of several books and articles, he has specialized in the area of dream work, integrating the ancient Sufi approach to dreams with the insights of Jungian psychology. Since 2000, his writing and teaching has been on spiritual responsibility in our present time of transition and an awakening global consciousness of oneness. More recently, he has written about the feminine and the anima mundi, world soul, and spiritual ecology. He has contributed to several other books, was featured on the TV series Global Spirit, and was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey as part of her Super Soul Sunday series. His recently published book, For Love of the Real, regarded as the completion of over 25 years of his writing and teaching, as it draws together many of the threads of his work, which began with his 1993 book, The Bond with the Beloved. And welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Llewellyn. It's great to have you with us.
Well, it's great to be here again, Steve. And I want to say from the beginning that as a Sufi, there are two central themes in Sufism, love and oneness, and I think they fit together beautifully with your work, and in a way they marry many of the themes that you are talking about. So it's wonderful to be here to share this central aspect of oneness that is so important today.
Yes, it is. Well, this is why we so look forward to having you as our special guest, Llewellyn, is you're just such a great leader in all of this in the Sufi world and, you know, candidly in the mainstream with people like Oprah Winfrey reaching out to you to make sure people all over the world are familiar with your work and your teaching and your writings. It's just a great privilege for all of us to be here with you.
Well, that's kind. And as you say, recently my focus has been on spiritual ecology. I feel that the climate change, or to put it more dramatically, the present ecocide is really the most vital issue of our time, and it needs our attention, both spiritual and physical, both hearts and hands. And so I'm very grateful to be able to talk about that today with you, because I really feel it is a vital, most pressing concern of this present time.
Yes, it is. And I've got your book right here with me, Llewellyn. It's called Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth. And wow, this book is dog-eared. We've got, I was sharing before we came on the program, we could spend a half a day going through this book. So we're going to just really get to the pearls of wisdom. It's an incredible book, definitely one for the library, and I highly recommend it. Again, it's called Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth. And let's just jump right in, Llewellyn, because there's so much here that is powerful. And let me, before I get to specific questions, are there things that you'd like to just say here at the outset?
Yes. I mean, I have a few basic points. And the first is that we need to regain a connection, a relationship to the earth as a living being. This was always understood by all traditions, all cultures, indigenous people. And the earth is a living being. As I say, it's not a problem to be solved. It's a living being in distress. And I was so deeply moved when Pope Francis published his encyclical last year, and he said, we have to listen to hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, because this is what is fundamental. We have to make a relationship with the earth as a living being. The earth is in distress. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen monk, calls these bells of mindfulness, but you don't have to look far. We have polluted the earth, the oceans are acidified, we are depleting the species, climate is warming, and we have to regain a connection with the earth as a living being. If you're sick and you go to the doctor, Steve, the doctor can either just listen to the symptoms and give you a prescription, or he can listen to you as a whole human being. And all the research says if the doctor listens to you as a whole human being, you're going to get much, much better more quickly. And so the problems in our present ecological situation that stem really from this very masculine, divisive culture of separation, culture of abuse of the earth, you know, we have to go back to the root. Rumi, the great Sufi poet, he says, return to the root of your own self. And the root of this is our relationship to the earth. We need to return to the earth as something sacred, which was always understood by our ancestors. The earth is a living, sacred being. It's interesting that many people in the Western culture will talk about life as sacred, and life has to be held as sacred, and this is very important, but they don't treat the earth as sacred, and if the earth is not the giver of life, what is it? So first I would say, hear the earth, make a relationship to the earth. I'll just give you a little example, and then we can discuss things in more detail. I start the day with a very simple routine, which I've been doing for many years. I get up very early, I have a cup of tea, I watch the news on my computer to see what's happening in the world, because for me it's very important to have a global perspective to my spiritual practice. We're not in isolation. I like to see what's happening if there's something in the world that needs prayers or attention. And then I meditate for half an hour, for 45 minutes. And then as soon as it is first light, I go for a walk. And I'm very blessed in that I live in a beautiful part of the countryside beside the bay north of San Francisco. And I go for an early morning walk to begin the day making a relationship with the earth as a living being. It's something very simple, and for me, actually, I have been doing it since I was 18 and began meditating. It is to feel the earth, to feel this heartbeat we share, to look at the clouds, to look at, here we have much fog, so often it's to look at the fog, to see a a white egret on the bay coming through the fog, just to feel the earth. And then from this place of a sacred relationship, my heart to the heart of the earth, the day can begin grounded in what is real. And then from this place of relationship, from a felt place of relationship, I think we can begin to make a contribution that is based upon something real, that is not just a scientific response or an analytic response, but is a lived response. And it is this shared empathy, this care that we have for the earth, the love that we have for the earth. And then, first of all, there is this need to reclaim a respect and a relationship to the earth as it's something living and sacred. It was always understood by every people before our Western civilization made this horrible divorce from what is sacred and what is sacred within creation.
Yes, so true. And boy, isn't it wonderful that the divine is inspiring not only you, but as you mentioned, Pope Francis with his encyclical and others, that people are waking up to this sense of oneness and wonder and not seeing the earth as something out there, which is in your preface to these essays. You mentioned that if we're going to walk out of this, we've got to walk out of it in oneness. We can't see the earth as something out there. That's really the beginning of the path, is really standing in this place where we know that, yes, we're created in the image and likeness of the divine, but so is the earth and all of life, and we're one. Everything is interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent.
It is, Steve. It is the most, actually, as a mystic, I am primarily a mystic, and it's the most basic mystical experience to experience the oneness in everything. The poet William Blake talked about to see the world in a grain of sand. And it is this knowing that everything is one. And this has become, it used to be a fringe idea when I first started talking about this in the late 90s. It was a fringe idea, and I'm so grateful that it has become more mainstream, this understanding we're all part of this one interconnected living ecosystem that breathes with us, and say the heartbeat is with us. What I would add to this, which is always understood, is that the world is not just a living being that is one, that is interconnected, that is interdependent, and there have been many scientific studies that are showing that now, but it is also a spiritual being. It has a soul, what the ancients understood as called the anima mundi, the soul of the world. It has a consciousness. The Kogi are wonderful people in Colombia. They call it Aluna, the spiritual principle within nature, and this is the guiding principle within nature. And again, once we step out of this strange illusion of separation, in fact, the Sufi journey is a journey from the illusion of separation back to union with God, and that oneness that we reach is a oneness that includes everything. The Sufis actually say there is both the interior oneness in which you merge into the divine, the drop becomes the ocean within the heart, you dissolve into the oneness of love within the heart. And there is also the exterior experience of oneness. Wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. That the whole world is, as you so rightly say, is a divine revelation. It's the first book of Revelation. In fact, the Sufis say that you can't know God but in essence, because God is beyond even our idea of the beyond. But you can come to know him in his creation, and this revelation, and this extraordinary creation that we are part of, we are not separate from. And so we have to return to this sacred ground that is essential to life, to our well-being, and even more so to the well-being of the planet, because we cannot afford to abuse it, to desecrate it, to treat it as a resource. The earth is not a resource, just as human beings are not consumers, Steve.
Right. I'm so glad. That's right. Oh, well, we're going to get to all of these themes and this as much depth as we can in an hour. I'm so glad that you're bringing in the spiritual as we talk about this oneness, because, of course, this is what we see in humanities team, too. I personally like to use the word God. Some others like to use, other
God
words.
God is good.
Yeah, no, to me, there's just God, the divine, universe is just blanketing us with love and blessings all day long. And
is indeed.
What we can do, unfortunately, especially in the Western world, is kind of hold up the shower curtain and not receive those blessings or that love,
Indeed.
and that peace, that bliss that is ours. And and that's the thing that really keeps me in the state of connection and keeps me. It's just a spilling over thing. I'm just taking God's love, and sharing it is all I'm doing.
And what's so important is to give this love to the earth. We are given so much. The earth gives us so much, and we give so little in return. And that's why I like Thich Nhat Hanh, who is one of the proponents of this spiritual response to our ecological crisis. He says we have to fall in love with the earth again. And love is central. Love is central to our relationship to the earth. And he says, walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet, which I think is a lovely expression. And we have to give our love back to the earth. This, as you know, it's our primary connection to God is love. This is the root of everything is love, and this is what the mystics experience. And it's interesting, many people, as I'm sure you know, Steve, when they have near-death experiences and they get taken to the other side, the basic message they all bring back is it's all about love. That's what matters. How much love did you give? How were you loved? That you are loved. It's all about love. And we have to love the earth again because we cannot afford to treat it in this way of abuse, of treating it like a commodity. We wouldn't treat our mother like that. And it's our great mother. It's the mother of all that is. It gives us life. It gives us air. It gives us food. It gives us clothes. It gives us friends. It gives us, and it is divine. And we have to fall in love with the earth again. We have to bring that primary connection back into our relationship with life, into our relationship with God that is embodied. There is as you know, there is a disembodied God, and I experienced that from when I was 17 and first went into deep meditation. There are other realms, spirit realms. There are angels. There are light. There is oceans of love, incredibly beautiful. You can experience them in meditation. But there is also the embodied God, the God that sadly Christianity turned away from in its early banishment of paganism, its persecution of the pagans, that everything is sacred. This is something you experience on the mystical journey. Everything is sacred. The most simple, the most ordinary things, and you pick up the piece of soil in your hands, you feel it, you feel its texture, and if you have a little garden like I do, and you can grow a potato, and you take it out of the soil, and you feel the love that is there, that has created what's going to be your dinner. And this is the embodied God, and we have to include that in our spiritual practice and our awareness, because our culture, for some strange reason, turned away from it and said, God is only to be found in heaven. And as a mystic, you know that God is everywhere. God is everything. He has created this incredibly beautiful, but also at this time, suffering world. And the world is suffering. That's why I like this expression, the cry of the earth, and why I was so moved to hear Pope Francis use it, because the earth is crying. It needs our attention, and it needs not just our physical attention, but our spiritual attention. That's why I like this expression of the Shakers, these mystical group in North America, when they have hands to work and hearts to God. I think that's a wonderful expression. We should care for the soil as well as the soul, because they go together. You can't divorce it. We've separated enough. We've separated heaven and earth long enough.
Yes, well, your book certainly just gets into this. These essays explore this from so many different directions. I'm going to go to some of these important things that are said in the essays because, again, this book, it's called Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth. It's one of the recent books by Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee, who, of course, is our special guest here today. In the first essay, Chief Oren Lyons says, as he's talking about this, he says, everything starts at home. It starts with you and then your family. And then from your family, it goes out into the world, and it says it's grassroots. I love that because that's very true and it's very practical, isn't it?
Yes, we have to begin at home. In fact, we have to begin also, in our own home, in our relationship to the earth, in our daily life. The American poet Wendell Berry, he writes, "And the world cannot be discovered by a journey of miles, no matter how long, but only by a spiritual journey, a journey of 1 inch, very arduous and humbling and joyful, by which we arrive at the ground at our own feet and learn to be at home." And it's how to be at home. We no longer know as a culture how to be at home. We are strangely disconnected. In fact, it's one of the paradoxes of this computer interconnected world that we are more connected and more disconnected. And we're more disconnected from the very earth under our feet, from the ground on which we walk. Yes, it begins with our family. It begins with our community. In fact, the community is, I think, incredibly important, particularly if you have a blessing to be part of a spiritual community. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, the next Buddha could be a Sangha. Spiritual community is very important, and to live from this place of grounded spirituality, not a spirituality in the clouds, but a grounded spirituality that cares. You care for your children. You care for your community. You care for the earth. You care for your environment. You can't separate anymore. You can't put anything in boxes because, as you know, Steve, everything is one. Everything is interconnected. It's not just an idea. It's a living reality, and we have to return to what our ancestors knew for millennia, that we are part of this living oneness and care. If you care for your family, you care for everything. If you care for your child, you care for life. If you love your child, you'll have God. There is no difference. Everything is one. Everything is connected. And I feel that so passionately.
Oh, me too. It's why we love having you on the program, and I love just as you're stepping through these themes, they're just all so right on target, just absolutely beautiful. I wanted to bring in, of course, Global Oneness Day is something we initiated back in 2010. This will be our 7th year celebrating Global Oneness Day. It's on October 24th. And last year, Anna Marie Peters, who is one of our important leaders, she's based out of South Africa, created a panel called "The Next Buddha is a Sangha." Mm-hmm. And we believe this is true. It's actually, I believe, why we're all here on this call. It's incredible to hear this wisdom and this inspiration and these teachings from Llewellyn, but he would be the first to share what's really important is that each of us step now into that circle of responsibility. I think it is true. The next Buddha is a Sangha.
And I think particularly small groups. Look, I've been in the spiritual business been part of a spiritual group since I was 19. It changed my life, and I've seen it change people's lives. It gives them a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. But more than that, I don't believe that big organizations, that politicians, that corporations are able to really respond to the real need of the moment, ecologically, politically, economically. Even in the climate change conference in Paris, which was great, they made a step forward, but everybody agrees it isn't a big enough step forward. And can it account for real change? Can it bring in what is many people are now calling the new story, the story based upon interconnectedness, based upon oneness, based upon a living earth, based upon a return to the sacred, what Joanna Macy, whose work I admire so much, calls the great turning. I don't think they can. They are the dinosaurs of the past. They are too caught up in patriarchal, hierarchical structures, too caught up in money, too engrossed in greed and profit and this strange fantasy of continued economic progress. I personally think very deeply that it is small groups organically coming together, individually having their own purpose. Some people are engaged in urban gardens. Some people are engaged in meditation and prayer. Some people are engaged in helping the environment in different ways. Some people, like our group, are bridging the two, inner meditation, inner prayer, and outer activity. That it is this network of organic connection of small groups, this connection of sanghas that create a big sangha that, in a way, can come together to be the organic structure of life recreating itself. We cannot impose our vision on life anymore. We've imposed enough over the last 200 years, and we haven't done very well with it. But life is organic. Life is a cellular structure. And human beings, their hearts open, their hands in service, real service, selfless service. They can be part of the regeneration of the earth, the recreation of a civilization that is based upon oneness, based upon living oneness, based upon care for the earth, care for each other. We're not here to exploit the earth. We're not here to exploit each other. We're not here to rape the earth. We're not here to rape each other. We're here to be, as Chief Oren Lyons said, part of the original instructions given to humanity was, we have to get along together. And this is very simple and very profound, and I do feel that it is this connection of small groups. And we have this Facebook page, Spiritual Ecology, which for an extraordinary way suddenly became very popular. And it has become a forum for connecting together all different groups and individuals who are engaged in this work of caring for the earth. So whether it's Joanna Macy's The Work That Reconnects, or individuals in different parts of the world. We actually now have a Spiritual Ecology youth program that's our offering for this year, because something I feel, and I want to share this with you, Steve, and see your response, is that I belong to the generation that, in a way, brought these spiritual teachings to the West. When I grew up in the 50s in England, they weren't present. Spiritual teachings weren't present. And then I remember the first Hare Krishna people in orange dancing in Oxford Street in London, and something changed. The Beatles went and meditated with the Maharishi. In the late 60s, my teacher came back from India, where she'd been trained by a Sufi master, and suddenly this different color was in the spectrum of consciousness. You can call it divine love, you can call it meditation, you can call it the awareness of spiritual oneness, whatever you like. And many of us, my generation, were drawn to these different spiritual groups, whether yoga or whether Sufism or Tibetan Buddhism or Vipassana, and we did the practices. And in a way, we were drawn to this. We were called to follow these different paths. And in so doing, we brought this spiritual consciousness to the West. People founded ashrams. They founded yoga centers. Like me, they wrote books about it all, translating these. Part of my work was to translate the Sufi texts into a way that could be understood in the West, just like Coleman Barks did this amazing work of bringing Rumi to the West, translating it in a way that touched us in the West. But what now? The next step for me is how to put those spiritual principles into action, how to put the understanding of oneness, which is a spiritual understanding, how to give it form, how to bring it into service, what are the projects, the grassroots projects that can help the world in its time of need based upon these spiritual principles. And this, I feel, is the calling for the next generation. It's like my son, who's been involved in this work for a long time. He said, look, there's no need for me to write any books, Dad, because you've written them all. But his work is, how do you galvanize young people to create the projects that are needed, the small projects, not great organizational projects that need millions and millions of dollars, but the small human grassroots projects, whether it's urban gardening or there are many, many different forms. Pay it forward. How are these different economic, ecological projects that the earth needs if it's going to survive, if it's going to transform? And this, I feel, is the calling for the next generation. We put out the ideas, these vital spiritual principles that, as I say, weren't there. I grew up in the 50s. It was very materialistic. You have a new car, you have a new washing machine, and that was kind of it. Spirituality didn't exist. There were no spiritual bookstores. There was a desert. And then slowly the shoots of this new civilization, as I call it, began to appear. And we built geodesic domes. We chanted. We whirled. We went on, and we brought these spiritual principles, like oneness, like the reality of divine love. Who spoke about that when I grew up? Nobody. And now we have this encyclical from the Pope that says we are all interconnected. We're all oneness, and we have to listen to the cry of the earth as much as the cry of the poor. But how are we going to implement those? This is, for me, the calling for the next generation, for the young people who have the energy. In our generation, we had the energy to build ashrams, to build spiritual centers, to start a movement, spiritual movement, but now more grassroots projects are needed.
Yes, so true. And this Facebook page you referenced, Spiritual Ecology, boy, I encourage everybody to go to Facebook and friend the Spiritual Ecology page if you haven't already. Buy this book, Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth. There are many, many calls to action throughout this book, as well as so much wisdom and just really this, all of this, the beauty, which is the divine, which is God. It's just throughout this book.
Yes,
I want to bring in one other practical step.
Yeah.
I'll mention it at the end, but go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. That's consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. There were 4 organizations, the Humanities Team being one of them, but also the Club of Budapest based in Europe, the Goy Peace Foundation based in Japan, and the Fowler Center for Business that comes out of Case Western University that created this Conscious Business Declaration. And I mentioned in the introduction that we need collective, we need to change the institutions here of the earth if we're to get back to living as one. And one of the specific things, the declaration starts by saying that business needs to come from this paradigm that we are all one with the earth and with life. But it also talks about the earth, and it says that we need to go beyond sustainability and do no harm. We need to focus on restoring, because there's so much damage that's been done already.
Well, it's interesting you use the word sustainability, because in the first conference in Rio, the first climate change conference in Rio, the word sustainability was used to refer to the sustainability of the whole environment, the whole ecosystem. And subtly over the next 20 years, it got changed. It got corrupted, in which sustainability now refers to the sustainability of our present energy-intensive industrialized society. And sustainability must be given back to the whole. We can't have sustainability for part. This is, you understand oneness. Oneness means if there is sustainability, it's not just for human beings, it's for the whole environment. It's very simple, but a very subtle shift in which the word sustainability, as you say, it must be for the whole. We've taken it away from the whole, and we've given it onto our present energy-intensive lifestyle, which is unsustainable by its very nature. Human beings are not consumers, and we don't really understand what this grip of materialism, what it is doing both to the body of the earth and to our souls. It is soul-destroying. In fact, one of the reasons when I should just explain that the book Spiritual Ecology is not just written by me, it's a collection of essays on the subject of how can we respond spiritually to our present environmental crisis by many different leaders, spiritual teachers, indigenous leaders like, say, Thich Nhat Hanh, Joanna Macy, Sandra Ingerman. And when one of the responses I got to this book was a 31-year-old person saying, "What advice do you have for people my age in dealing with a world that tells us we are nothing but material mechanisms and has almost no concept of soul?" And this consumer-driven culture, this materialistic culture, has, in a way, robbed us of our birthright, Steve, which, as you know, is the divine, is the soul, is the light of God within us. We have been conditioned by this dark monster of materialism to believe that we are consumers, and we are not. We are made in the image of God. We are these incredibly beautiful sparks of light that come into a human being and become a human being, and the whole world is a revelation of God. And we have forgotten this. We've forgotten why we are here. That's why Wendell Berry says, we have to go back home. We have to recognize the real nature of life, which, as you know, is about the divine, is about the spark in the heart, is about the fact that we are one with everything and one with God, and we are full of divine light. And this is so essential, so simple, and we don't realize what we are being sold when we are caught in the grip of materialism, when we are entranced by these false gods, call them what you will, by this endless desire to buy. We don't realize what we are selling. We don't realize how it takes the light of our soul. It takes the light of our soul, and sadly, it takes the light of the world's soul. And people have become lost, and they have become addicted to everything except what is necessary, what is sacred. We have to return to the sacred essence of our own selves and of the earth. It's very, very simple. The earth is sacred. We are sacred. Life is sacred. That is what is real. And we have to return to it. We have to reclaim it from what our present culture is telling us, which is not just lies, it's not just deceitful, it's created ecocide. It's created this destruction of the world in the most horrible way imaginable, and the destruction of what is sacred. And if we lose this light, if we lose what is sacred, then it is a downhill road. And I would rather not be here for that.
Yeah, well, the book is so beautifully points out that at its basis, these problems that we're talking about are spiritual in nature. It's this losing our connection with the divine, and that the earth is part of the divine. Everything is part of the divine. That in a sense, our daily living is we're walking through a church, but we don't know it. I love.
We've lost. Sorry, go on.
You brought in Thomas Berry before. I was just going to quote something here from his essay. There again, these essays throughout this book, Spiritual Ecology, are wonderful. Thomas Berry says, we have lost our connection to this other, deeper reality of things. Consequently, we now find ourselves on a devastated continent where nothing is holy, nothing is sacred. We no longer have a world of inherent value, no world of wonder, no untouched, unspoiled, unused world. There's also, I wanted to connect this with something that came in, a question from Jeannie in Miami Lakes, because she says, thank you for this conference and its teaching. I know you ask us to keep the earth in our prayers. Can you please speak about the importance of that? That certainly connects with what Thomas Berry is talking about here.
Yes, again, it goes, thank you for the question. It goes to what is most central. I always say, we know how to pray for a friend, for a relative who needs healing. In the Sufi tradition, we do something very simple. We just put it in our heart, because the heart is, for us, the place of direct connection with the divine, and we offer it to God in meditation and prayer with love. My teacher, he would say, if the heart has heard the prayer, God has heard the prayer. And in our particular practice, I introduced this praying for the earth of just before you go into meditation or when you are in prayer, just put the earth as a living being in your heart, this living being that sustains us, this feeling. First of all, you have to make a connection with the earth. You have to feel a relationship to the earth, whether you just look at the clouds in the sky or a tree or however you make a connection with the earth. And then offer it to God with love, because it needs our healing, it needs our remembrance. And there are many other ways to do this. As I say, I like to walk, and to walk in a sense of prayer for the earth. That's why I like the saying of Thich Nhat Hanh, walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet, because then your walk is a prayer. Native Americans call it walking in a sacred manner. So you can either pray for the earth inwardly when you're in prayer and meditation. Just place the earth in your heart and remember it to God, because for the Sufis, it's this connection with the divine that is the most potent form of healing that comes from the source. Or in your daily life, you remember the earth, and really, for most indigenous people, everything was a prayer, and as a mystic, you try to pray continually. Everything is a prayer. If you are cooking, if you are cleaning, if you are walking, it is a prayer. It is a connection. And you include the earth in your daily life, in your daily prayer, this relationship with the earth. This is, again, it has to do with relationship. This is, of course, the feminine, and part of the debris of our patriarchal history is a rejection of these very simple principles that belong to the sacred feminine, like listening, like being receptive, like relating. And in fact, you began with quoting Thomas Berry, and he has a quotation which I find immensely meaningful. He says, we are talking only to ourselves. We are not talking to the rivers. We are not listening to the wind and the stars. We have broken the great conversation. By breaking that conversation, we have shattered the universe. All the disasters that are happening now are consequences of that spiritual autism. And Steve, it's just a matter of relating. It's just like when you and I talk, and we are also including all the people listening, because it's not a lecture, it's a conversation. And I am sensing, even as I sit here beside the bay in California, I am sensing this network of people whose hearts are listening, whose beings are attentive, and we are part of this network. That's the wonderful quality of the work that you do. You create this web of connection, and we are being attentive. We are being attentive to what matters, to this underlying heartbeat of life, this prayer of creation. We are actually part of the prayer of creation. We just don't know it. We are part of God's prayer, and creation is part of God's prayer. This is, as Rumi says somewhere, we are intimate beyond belief, but we have forgotten it. But maybe by this sharing, by this network of attention, we can reconnect, we can remember, we can feel this communion of souls that we are part of. And it's wonderful to feel it, as I say, sit here in a little room beside the ocean in California, and I feel you, and I feel all the people who are connected, who are participating, and this is, and our prayer is also listening. You know, listening can also be a prayer if we listen with the heart, and we are including the earth in our conversations, so we are including the earth in our prayers.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I feel that too. It is a communion of souls, and being in community like this is just extraordinary. And thank you again to everybody that's here. We've got just a large listening audience, and a large live listening audience, and I'm sure many more that'll listen to the recording. Let me bring in a question or something here from Thich Nhat Hanh. He wrote one of your essays, and then I'm going to connect it with a statement that was brought in by somebody in Uganda. Thich Nhat Hanh says, the American dream is not possible for the people of China, India, or Vietnam. The American dream is no longer even possible for the Americans. We can't continue to live like this. It's not a sustainable economy. We have to have another dream, the dream of brotherhood and sisterhood, of loving kindness and compassion. That dream is possible right here and now. We have the Dharma, we have the means, and we have enough wisdom to be able to live this dream. Mindfulness is at the heart of the awakening of enlightenment. And then let me just bring in a question here related to this. This is from Chief Tamale Bwaya. He's in Kampala, Uganda, and he says, Chief Vali, in Africa, we understand the perspective of oneness to mean the interconnection and working relationship of all racial values that binds humanity. Do you view it in the same way in the West?
I come from a premise that everything is one, that everything is an expression of the divine and created out of love. And the question for humanity is very simple. Do we live from that perspective? If we live from that perspective, of course, all races are one. Everything is a unique expression of the one being. Or do we turn away from that? Do we turn towards ego? Do we turn towards greed? Do we turn towards the darkness of our present civilization, in which there are the haves and the have-nots, in which there is this great divisiveness? And it seems that we stand both as a civilization and as a whole planet on the cusp. Are we going to move towards oneness, towards unity, and a unity that embraces every race, every human being, every breath, and all the animals and all the trees and the lakes and the rivers and everything, and which is very simple, very essential, and it has to do with love, it has to do with oneness? Or are we going to be caught in this addiction of greed, of desire? We have far more than we want, or far more than we need, I should say, not more than we want, because human beings seem to endlessly want more and more, and the more unfulfilled they are, the more they want. And one of the shadow sides of our materialistic culture is that we want more and more because we cannot be satisfied. Human beings are not made to be satisfied by things. they're made to be satisfied by love, by relationships, by community, by family, by sharing a meal that is cooked together, that is cooked with love, sharing a meal together that is cooked with love. I remember the first time my teacher cooked a meal for me. I was 22, and I'd never realized you can taste love before. It never occurred to me. And it was a simple meal of Indian chapatis and fritters and chutney. And there was love there. And it nourished something. If you are loved, you are happy with little. If you are joyful, you don't mind, a nice meal of, potatoes and vegetables that are cooked with love. You don't need something elaborate. You don't need all this stuff, with this addiction to stuff that we have in the West. And I think many people from other cultures have a lot to teach us in the West, because they have lived with less, and we are addicted to living with more and more and more. And it's a tragedy, because it robs our souls in ways we don't understand. So yes, we have to choose. It's a choice between oneness, between community, between love, or isolation, greed, and a certain disempowerment, because we give our energy, our life, our integrity to this monster of materialism, to this divisiveness that just causes anger and resentment and bitterness and all the other dark forces that are in the grip of so many people in our world today.
Yes, they say about the West that yes, there's material wealth, but there's spiritual poverty, and it's so true. My wife and I were married in Fiji, and we went to this church on a Sunday where these people had so very little in the way of material goods. But oh my God, when they were singing and just the love and expression in their face as we met them and talked with them, they had true wealth.
Yeah.
We could feel that in the most extraordinary way, and of course that's true for so much of the world, that there's little material wealth, but there's real spiritual wealth, and of course
money
true
can't
wealth
buy you love. It's a cliche, but it's true.
That's right. Yeah. No, when we talk, of course, oneness is the form, but its essence is love. So
I think that what you said there is most important. Oneness is the form, and its essence is love. That should be, written. Everybody should write that down. Oneness is the form, but the essence is love. What more can you want?
And it's wonderful, because this emerging culture that all of us on this call are a part of is this emerging culture of oneness and of love. And I love just all of these beautiful expressions of love, where you bring it down to the simple process of eating a beautiful meal and feeling the love of the meal and the company and the ambiance in the room, which is love.
Of course. That's our heritage as human beings.
Yes, well, of course, and that's what we're returning to, and I think it's palpable that there is something emerging. Of course, here in the West, our mainstream media doesn't reflect this yet, but it's happening. This awakening, this transformation, this shift is occurring, and it's because all of us on this call we're here, of nurturing each other through this hour-long time together, but. Then we step into this circle of responsibility, and in our homes, in our community, as we're changing businesses, as we're out in the world, we get involved, and that's where the rubber hits the road, where we
become... That is, as you say, how can we bring love and oneness into our life, into our environment? And without creating, us and them, without more divisiveness, how can we bring love and oneness into our life, into our environment, into our work? And it, it can be just a simple thing of caring for friends or family. It can be small projects, whether it's, say, urban gardens that bring together people in an area to start a certain healing of an environment and sharing things together. Or there are many different forms, and that, as I said, that is the next step. These are the values. You know them, we know them. Most of the people listening to this call know them. Yes, we have to pray for the earth. This is very, very important. We have to include the earth in our prayers. We have to have respect for the earth. We have to reconnect with what is sacred within creation, because creation is sacred, much more sacred than we realize. And then how are we going to bring that love, that connection, that energy, that empowerment into our life, into our culture, into our communities? And that is the next step of the work that needs to be done, as far as I can see.
Let me go to a question here related to this. This is from Bob and Slow. I'm not sure where Slovenia. I'm not sure where this is, but where he's located. But he says, "Can you please talk about these small circles and what goes on there? I'm creating a few here and assist in first understanding how we are cultivating separation before we can chat about cultivating oneness."
This is to me is very, very important. When I first started this work in 92, and I had some visions about, often you see at the beginning of a certain spiritual work, you see its underlying potential. And I saw this network of love and light around the world, and I saw that this network was going to help the Earth and humanity evolve into its next stage of evolution. And I saw that part of the structure was made out of small groups coming together. And, there is this saying in the Bible, when 2 or 3 are gathered together for my sake, there I am also. What it means is if there's a small group that is founded for a higher purpose in which people come together, whether it's for selfless service in helping the homeless or in meditation or prayer, they inwardly connect with something greater than themselves. And this is not just a disembodied God. This is not just the God of the Old Testament, this figure on a cloud. This is a living, divine energy that is forming in this world, that is a network. I call this a network of love and light because that's how I have been shown it. And outwardly, people can connect in different ways. People can form different meditation groups. But to recognize that the moment you are part of this bigger community, and sometimes you meet together with people and there's a look in the eyes, there's a knowing that you're part of the new story, you're part of what is being born rather than what is dying. And there's this shared sense of purpose, and something is coming alive in a new way, and it's vital. All that matters is that the groups, as they are come together for a higher purpose, for whether it's in service, whether it's in prayer, in meditation. It doesn't matter, but to recognize that the value of this community, and we are a global community as much as we are a local community, and that's what matters. You don't have to make a big organization. Yes, it's wonderful to have an organization like yours, Steve, that people can hear this voice globally, but it's how do we bring this into our communities, into our environment, and that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, beautiful. And I love that we're getting into so many practical applications of oneness, because that is what this call is about. In this case, we're, of course, talking about the earth and how we can come together to heal this part of ourselves that we call earth. Let me bring in a question here from Amira in Framingham, Massachusetts, because I suspect she's speaking for more than just her daughter here. There probably are some number of listeners that can relate to this. She says, "Hi, my 21-year-old daughter is an empath and has heard the trees cry ever since she was very young. I think she doesn't know what to do and is so distressed that she has developed 2 autoimmune diseases and spends 36 to 72 hours sleeping at a time. She is completely retreated from people, and I was wondering if the Facebook page Spiritual Ecology could help her reconnect, or I'll just ask also, or other things you might share, Llewellyn, that would be helpful to her."
So this is actually touches a much deeper question, which has to do with grief. If you are sensitive to what is happening, if you hear the trees crying, you feel this grief of the earth, this cry of the soul of the world, and I have felt it has created enormous sorrow for me and for many, many other people. The first important step is to recognize the reality of this. This is not some fantasy. It is real. If you are sensitive, if you are perceptive, you feel it. I spoke a lot with Joanna Macy about this. I admire her very much, and she has worked with people on the environmental front lines. And she said, in one of her writings, she said, when you look at what is happening to our world, and it is hard to look at what is happening to our water, our air, our trees, our fellow species, it becomes clear that unless you have some roots in a spiritual practice that holds life sacred and encourages joyful communion with all your fellow beings, facing the enormous challenges ahead becomes nearly impossible. So the first step is to recognize what you are experiencing is real. It's not some pathology. It's a very sensitive response to what is happening. And then the next step is, if you can, to find some spiritual practice that grounds you deep within yourself in what is sacred within yourself. Because I give you another example. The Sufis, we work with love, and there is the feminine side of love. Love, everything has two sides, a masculine and a feminine. The masculine side is, I love you. The feminine side is, I am longing for you. I am waiting for you. And we work with the pain of love. And it's a heartbreaking journey through the pain of love. But it takes you direct to the source, because you don't think about it, you feel it. And it takes you deep, deep within yourself. Like Rumi says, you return to the root of your own self. Real sorrow takes you. But you have to have the strength to find the deepest spiritual connection within your own being. And if you can, to find some spiritual practice, some prayer, some meditation that can give you strength to bear what you see. First of all, what you are experiencing is true. It is real, and you are not alone in this. I wrote a whole book, Darkening of the Light. When I saw this, it was almost unbearable. It broke my heart. It still does in many ways. And Joanna Macy talks a lot about grief and the importance of grief and recognizing grief. But the only way, in my understanding, to bear the grief, just like as a lover of God, you bear the longing for God, the cry of the heart, the cry of the earth and the cry of the heart, they are the same somewhere, is to find some spiritual practice that can ground you in what is sacred. So you return to what is sacred. And it can be, a simple act of love and care. It can be a meditation practice. It can be a prayer. Whatever draws you. Because the Sufi actually says that my cry to God is God's prayer. This is part of the mystery of oneness. When we cry out to God, this loneliness, this aloneness, this despair, this longing, that is actually part of God's prayer. In fact, the Sufi says that those whom God really loves, he doesn't answer their prayers because he loves to hear them crying, because it is this intimacy of love, this intimacy of the heart. But it is helpful to give a context to it, to find some spiritual practice, like Joanna Macy says, that holds life sacred, that values and recognizes what you are experiencing, but also holds it as sacred. This connection to the pain, to the suffering, which is deeply rooted in the earth, in her suffering, in the abuse. And then it takes us back to the source, it takes us back to God, because oneness is not just about joy and beauty. Oneness is also about suffering. It is the pain of the sick. It is, in fact, Mother Teresa was asked, how can you take care of so many people? And she said, I only take care of the one.
Gosh, what a stunning way to, we're coming into the wrap-up phase of this call, and what a stunning way to wrap up this call, and focusing on this inner journey, this aspect of spiritual practice. If we don't go within, we go without, and how important it is to have our spiritual practice so that we can enjoy this gift of life, and we can be this positive force for change in the world, because I think there are so many people, younger and older people, that are empaths and that are quite challenged in today's world. So that was beautiful, Llewellyn. Thank you. And I'm going to just read something here real quick, which is near the end of your book. We're, of course, talking about Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth, written by Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee. I'm going to read this, and then, Llewellyn, if you can share a website or websites where people can go to follow your work, that would be terrific. I'm then going to just talk about some coming programs that listeners will want to be aware of. Near the end of the book, Richard Rohr writes this in one of his essays. He says, the incarnation of God did not happen in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. That is just when some of us started taking it seriously. The incarnation actually happened approximately 14.5 billion years ago, with a moment that we now call the Big Bang. That is when God actually decided to materialize and to expose who God is. This alone provides any solid basis for reverence, universal sacrality, and our attempts to form a spiritual ecology that transcends groups and religions. Truly stunning, and it takes your breath away to really kind of sit with that. Llewellyn, what websites can people go to follow your work?
Yes, thanks. We have 3 websites. The first is about my Sufi work, which is goldensufi.org, goldensufi.org. And the second is about spiritual ecology, spiritualecology.org, and we also have a Spiritual Ecology Facebook page. And the third is Working with Oneness, which is how I began this oneness work, which is workingwithoneness.org, and we also have a Working with Oneness Facebook page to help promote these teachings on oneness. So those are the 3 websites and 2 Facebook pages that make this work hopefully accessible to those who are interested. And thank you so much, Steve, for this conversation. It's been wonderful to share these deep, deep, important spiritual and global issues with you.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you. Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee. Wow, it's such a just total privilege and pleasure to spend the hour with you, and we look forward to our next program with you already. Just the wisdom and love and courage and vision, strength, perseverance, all of these things that you've shared are just so off the charts, and thank you. I'm going to come back and thank you again, but let me just share some of what is coming up that people might want to be familiar with. We have a program next week. We actually have off. We have programs almost every week, but next week we're taking off. So our next program is Thursday, April 14th, and I'm going to be interviewing Xiuhtezcatl Martinez, who's this now 16-year-old leader of the Earth Guardians. It's interesting these 2 calls fall so close together because he's somebody who wrote something for the forward to or an acknowledgement for the Spiritual Ecology book written by Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee. He's an amazing person, only 16 years old, that leads the Earth Guardians and is involved in ecology activism all over the world. So I encourage you to check out that. That call begins at 9 o'clock Pacific time on Thursday, April 14th. To look at all of our upcoming programs, you can go to livinginone.com. You can register for free for our programs, and if you miss the program, the live program, the audio links are available for free for 48 hours. Also, our program is focused on living in oneness. So I want to invite you to be part of something we created in Humanities Team. It's called Community Circle. It's only $10 a month, and it's for those who wish to be part of an intentional community committed to living and embodying oneness, those who want to collaborate and connect with leaders engaged in spiritual activism, a community that gives and receives support to each other, a program that gives you access to all of our audio links to the Living in Oneness Summit, Global Oneness Day, and much more. There are over 360 programs that you and your family can access. There's also a private Facebook community. And just a couple of weeks ago, we created a program that's on Fridays at 5:30 Pacific time. It's a circle call that's virtual that comes together for Community Circle members where everybody comes together to share about their journey in oneness. So, again, that's just $10 a month, and you can go to humanitiesteam.org and click on Community Circle to learn more about that program. Also, I wanted to mention something I brought up here just a little bit ago. Humanities Team, the Club of Budapest, the Goy Peace Foundation, and the Fowler Center for Business out of Case Western University recently created a Conscious Business Declaration that defines a whole new standard for business in the 21st century. It shares we must move beyond profit as the exclusive focus to profit that comes from nurturing humanity, the earth, and life on earth. If you go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, you can read and sign the Conscious Business Declaration. And if you resonate with it, we also invite you to share it with your friends and colleagues. Also, we're going to be doing free webinars beginning April 18th. Ken Wilber will be part of the April 18th webinar. We've got other leaders that will be joining us that week, Ronaldo Brudico, Lance Secretan, and Alan Watkins. John Thomas, who is the Conscious Business Director here at Humanities Team, is also a part of those. I'm also on those calls. We'll be sharing lots of free best practices for conscious business, and we'll tell you about a curriculum that trains and certifies you in conscious business. We're asking people to sign the declaration and then do one of two things. Either, if you're part of a business, to send somebody in your business through the training, or if you can't do that, to create a small budget and hire somebody to bring a trained person into your business to convert it to a conscious business. All of our paychecks, our economy, everything right now comes from the business community, and as we know, the current business community focuses on profit only. Conscious businesses are focused on creating life-sustaining, life-supporting, and life-enhancing activity, and they make a profit from that. So we feel that if we don't adjust the institution of business, we're in trouble. So I encourage you to check that out, consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. I want to come back and thank you again, Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee. Thank you so much. Just really so much, so wonderful to be with you.
Oh, it's been wonderful to be with you and just to share these deeply felt, passionate beliefs.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Just the heart energy on this call. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so
also
much.
want to thank my colleagues. I call them my angels here, Nanette Kennedy, Dee Meyer, Penny Heipel, and Monica Augustine. And these are the four women that are running this program and creating the communications and promotions, bringing in the questions from you, the listeners. Thank you to my partners. And then last, definitely not least, each of you, the listeners, who've made it a priority to be here to join us for this call today, and who are spiritual activists out in the world just doing all of this important work that we're talking about. In closing, I want to invite everyone on this call to really live as one with the divine and each other. As we've shared, we do believe this is ultimate reality, and one of the best ways to spread the invitation of oneness and to create this world that we've all dreamed about and envisioned is to really embody it, to live it. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on Thursday, April 14th in 2 weeks at 9 o'clock Pacific time when we're back on the air with Cheska Martinez. Okay, take care, everybody. Take care, Llewellyn.
Bye-bye, Steve.
Talk
Thanks
soon.
so much.
Bye-bye, Llewellyn. Look forward to being in touch soon. Take care. Bye-bye.